But much like you were talking about with the dorm days, I was already a very experienced, proficient uh, weed smoker and drug taker when I got to the dorms. But I still, that was like my heaviest smoking period, was living in the dorm. So
Something
there's
about it,
something
man.
about that situation, even though it was yeah, it's like you're on permanent vacation with your buddies and you're staying in a hotel, and, unfortunately, every now and then you got to go to class. But the rest of the time, you might as well sit around and smoke weed and play video games, right? And so, and that was also how I made friends. I went, I was from New York and I went to school in Kentucky. I didn't know anyone, and that's how I made friends. Also, uh, the dorms that I lived in, you could smoke in any of the rooms as long as both roommates smoked cigarettes. It was you could smoke in the dorm buildings, and my room was the only room that the two roommates smoked cigarettes. So it was the only room that basically was the only smoking room. So everyone that had a roommate that didn't smoke would come into our room to have a cigarette. So like our room just became the party room just because it had an
Yeah.
ashtray in it, basically. And I don't think I've told this story, but I made friends with these. Well, and also, so most of the people, is a kind of a commuter school. So even though it was dorms, most people went away for the weekends to go hang out with their friends and stuff like that. But I obviously couldn't because I was, from New York. And so there were two guys, and they were two black guys. I forgot their real names, but they were Grizz and Ree. And they couldn't smoke in their rooms. And they were from Louisville, so it was kind of a far drive. So they didn't go home on the weekends. So we became friends because they wanted to come and smoke a black and mild in my room, and then we ended up smoking other things and just became friends that way. And I was this long haired hippie fish head, and one benefit too was once we started smoking blunt, I taught them how to smoke a bong, and they taught me how to roll a blunt, and it was kind of uh, a good blending of the cultures going on in that room. Um, it wasn't room 420, but it definitely should have been. But um, our the RA on our floor didn't know what weed smelled like, but he knew like there was always smoke pouring out of our room because there could be 20 people in there smoking cigarettes any night of the week. So he never thought about, oh, there's people hanging out in there smoking. They might be smoking weed. He didn't know what it smelled like. So this this one night, Grizz and Ree had brought some girls by, and we were hanging out in my room, and I also was using mushrooms and acid at the time, so I had a bunch of black lights and laser lights and lava lamps and stuff that they weren't used to partying with, and so we were hanging out in there with the black light on, and they started playing music and they were freestyling over it, and the music was pretty loud. We had like 5 or 6 blunts going, and there was bong sitting there and everything. And all of a sudden there's a knock at the door, and without even thinking, I just opened the door. And it was the RA sitting there with a clipboard. And so it's this long-haired hippie white dude and two big black guys and like 3 or 4 black girls with
Oh my
weed
goodness.
smoke pouring out, rap music blaring, and it's all black lights and lava lamps in there. And I was like, oh shit, we're busted. And he was like, hey,
Oh my
next weekend's
gosh.
parents weekend. I was just you have to sign a waiver
Bro.
that like you won't walk around naked or something like that. So I just had to like sign this thing. And he's like, "Oh, you
Wow.
guys have a good night." Like he had no idea that he should have broken that situation up. But unfortunately, somewhere between first semester and second semester of my freshman year, uh, another RA came down and smelled weed coming out of our room, and then told our RA, he was like, "That's weed." And then from that point on, anytime we sparked anything, the cops were called.
Damn.
Luckily, we were on the yeah. I ran from the cops and had to go hide shit. And luckily, we were on the first floor, and you could just open the window
and dip
and
out.
and the parking lot was right there, and you could throw stuff in someone's car or the
Wow.
bed of a truck or something like that. So I. Well, I've told the story before. I don't know if you ever heard it on one of the podcasts, but we were actually growing mushrooms. That was the first time I grew mushrooms, was in the dorms. And we got the cops called for smoking weed, and they came and searched the room. And we had gotten all the weed and all the pipes and everything out, but we didn't get rid of the bin of mushrooms. We like put a coat over it. And one of the campus cops found it and was like, "Hey, can you tell me what this is?" And without thinking, my friend was like, well, that's for a biology experiment. And he was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And like put it back. He was like, was it right here? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mess that up. And he's like, it's okay. And then the other cop had found like some seeds and stems on the ground and was like, we could kick you out of campus for this. And like, we didn't get in any trouble, but it's like, are you kidding me? Like, that's how stupid cops are. So.
Dude, that's crazy that dorms were that way.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty nuts. But yeah, I mean, I've been a weed smoker my whole life, but that was, just there was something about that dorm life, that was like the heaviest time of my life. I don't know.